Fleet Commander stood at the viewing window of his command vessel and looked at the small blue planet in the distance. Earth. It was such a tiny world, so far from the center of the galaxy, so alone in this quiet corner of space. He almost felt sorry for the creatures living there. Almost. The hegemony had conquered 4,000 worlds across 3 galaxies. They had crushed civilizations that had existed for millions of years. They had broken empires that once thought themselves unbreakable. And now they had come to Earth, a planet whose people had barely learned to travel between stars. Turned to face his officers. They stood in perfect formation, their gray skin reflecting the blue light from the tactical screens. Their 4 eyes watched him with absolute loyalty. "Status report," he said. His tactical officer, a younger named, stepped forward. "Commander, the fleet is in position. 12,000 warships fully armed and ready. The humans have detected our approach, but their response has been minimal." Minimal asked. "They have activated some orbital defense stations around their planet. Our scans show primitive energy shields and basic kinetic weapons, nothing that could threaten even our smallest patrol craft." Paused. "There are also some unusual energy readings coming from their moon, but they do not match any known weapon signatures." Waved his hand dismissively. "Probably mining equipment. These primitives have only had faster-than-light travel for, 100 years. Their species is still an infant." He walked slowly across the bridge, his boots clicking against the metal floor. On every screen around him, he could see the might of the fleet. Massive dreadnoughts that could crack planets in half. Carriers filled with thousands of fighter craft. Destroyers, cruisers, and assault ships stretching across millions of kilometers of space. It was the largest fleet ever assembled for a single conquest. Perhaps it was overkill for such a weak species, but believed in being thorough. "Begin the standard broadcast," he ordered. "Give them the terms of surrender." On Earth's moon, Lieutenant Commander Daniel Hayes sat in the control room of Defense Platform Sentinel-7. He was a tall man with gray hair and calm eyes. He had served in the Earth Defense Force for 30 years, and he had been waiting for this moment for most of them. The alien transmission came through on every channel. A harsh, clicking voice spoke in broken English. "Creatures of the planet Earth, you are now subjects of the hegemony. Surrender your world, your resources, and your people. Resistance will result in complete destruction. You have 1 hour to respond." Hayes listened to the message without any change in his expression. Around him, his crew looked nervous. Some of them were young, fresh out of the academy. They had trained for this scenario, but training was different from reality. "Sir," one of them said, a young woman named Lisa Porter, "there are 12,000 ships out there. Our orbital stations don't stand a chance." Hayes nodded slowly. "That's what it looks like, isn't it?" He reached for his communication panel and opened a secure channel. The face that appeared on his screen belonged to Admiral Price, the commander of Earth Defense Command. She was an older woman with silver hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. Admiral Hayes said, "We have contact, the hegemony, 12,000 vessels. They're demanding our surrender." Admiral Price looked at him for a long moment. Then, very slowly, she smiled. It was not a kind smile. "Protocol Omega, Lieutenant Commander. Authorization code Alpha 77 Delta." Hayes felt his heart beat faster. He had known this day would come. He had prepared for it. But still, hearing those words made it real. "Understood, Admiral. Initiating Protocol Omega." He turned to his crew. "Listen carefully. What I'm about to tell you is classified at the highest level. Everything you thought you knew about Earth's defenses is a lie. What the aliens see, what they have scanned, what their intelligence reports tell them, all of it is exactly what we wanted them to see." The young officer stared at him in confusion. Hayes continued, "For the past century, humanity has known about the existence of alien civilizations. We discovered that the galaxy is a dangerous place, filled with empires that conquer and destroy anything weaker than themselves. So we made a choice. We pretended to be weak. We hid our true technology. We let the galaxy believe we were primitives who could barely light a fire. He pressed a series of buttons on his console. All around the moon, hidden panels began to open. Thousands of weapons arrays, concealed beneath the lunar surface for decades, started to power up. "They think they're attacking a helpless planet," Hayes said. "They're about to learn how wrong they are." Far away, in the underground command center beneath the Rocky Mountains, Admiral Price addressed the full War Council of Earth. Generals, admirals, and political leaders from every nation sat around the massive table, watching her. "The hegemony has made first contact," she announced. "They have demanded our surrender and threatened our destruction. As of this moment, we are at war." She pressed a button, and the main screen showed the alien fleet in all its terrible glory. 12,000 warships, bristling with weapons, slowly approaching Earth. "For 98 years we have prepared for this moment. We have watched the galaxy. We have learned its rules. And we have built something that no alien species has ever imagined possible." She paused. "Today we stop hiding." General Cole, the commander of the space fleet, stood up. "All vessels are ready, Admiral. 40,000 ships in quantum-fold position. Planet crackers are standing by. The enemy has no idea we exist." Price nodded. "Good. When they entered our system, they expected to find sheep. They will find wolves instead." On the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, Fleet Commander watched the countdown timer. The humans had 50 minutes left to surrender. He expected them to beg for mercy long before then. His communication officer turned to him. "Commander, we are receiving a response from Earth." Smiled. "Already, put it through. Let us hear them plead for their lives." The screen flickered and Admiral Price's face appeared. She looked at with an expression he did not understand. It was not fear. It was not desperation. If anything, she looked almost amused. "This is Admiral Price of Earth Defense Command," she said. "We have received your demands. Our answer is no. We will not surrender. We will not negotiate. And we will not warn you again." Laughed. "Brave words from a primitive species. You have no idea what you are facing. My fleet will burn your planet to ash." Price's expression did not change. "Fleet Commander, your species has conquered 4,000 worlds. You have destroyed civilizations far older than ours. And in all that time, you never once stopped to wonder, what if someone out there was smarter than you? What if someone was watching? What if someone was waiting?" She leaned closer to the screen. "You really should have done your homework." The transmission ended. Stared at the blank screen. For the first time in his long career, he felt something cold crawling up his spine. He told himself it was nothing. The humans were bluffing. They had to be bluffing. But deep down, in a place he would never admit existed, Fleet Commander began to wonder if he had made a terrible mistake. The first minute began with fire. Fleet Commander, still unsettled by the human admiral's strange confidence, gave the order to attack. 200 warships moved forward and fired their weapons at Earth's orbital defense stations. Beams of burning plasma crossed the darkness of space and struck their targets. The stations exploded. Metal and fire scattered into the void. On the bridge, officers cheered. "Their defenses are falling," reported with satisfaction. "As expected, their technology is no match for ours." Nodded, but he could not shake the feeling that something was wrong. The humans had seemed so calm, so sure of themselves. Why would they act that way if they knew they were going to lose? On the bridge of the Earth destroyer Ironclad, Captain watched the orbital stations die. He felt nothing. Those stations were empty. They had been empty for years. They existed only to be destroyed, to make the enemy feel confident. All ships, said into his communicator, drop the veil. Across the solar system, humanity revealed its true face. The surface of the moon cracked open. What had appeared to be dead rock and ancient craters transformed into something else entirely. Thousands of weapon platforms rose from beneath the lunar surface, their barrels pointing toward the alien fleet. Each one carried enough firepower to destroy a small city. But that was only the beginning. Space itself seemed to tear apart as 40,000 human warships emerged from quantum-fold points. They appeared everywhere at once, behind the fleet, beside it, above it, below it. Massive carriers the size of small moons. Sleek destroyers bristling with weapons that glowed with strange energy. And at the center of the formation, 12 ships larger than anything they had ever seen. Planet crackers. Weapons designed to break worlds in half. On the Eternal Dominion, every alarm began screaming at once. Stared at his tactical display, his 4 eyes wide with disbelief. Commander, Commander, this is impossible. There are 40,000 ships, 40,000. They appeared from nowhere. Our sensors never detected them. Grabbed the edge of his command chair to steady himself. How? The humans don't have this technology. They can't have this technology. They only developed faster-than-light travel a century ago. Sir, another officer said, his voice shaking, their ships are not using standard FTL drives. They're using quantum-fold technology. That's theoretical. No species has ever made it work. The humans have, whispered. Commander Vanessa Cole led the first wave of interceptors. Her ship, the Viper, was small and fast, designed for close combat. She had trained for this moment her entire life. Her parents had trained for it. Her grandparents had helped design the ships she now flew. All pilots, she said, her voice steady, weapons free. Show them what we can do. The human interceptors moved at speeds that had believed impossible. They crossed the distance between the fleets in seconds, weaving between enemy ships like ghosts. Their weapons fired continuously, punching through shields as if they were made of paper. On the ironclad, a young gunner named Park sat at his weapons console. He had never fired at a real enemy before. In the academy, they had told him that alien shields were powerful, that battles would be long and difficult. They had lied to him too. He targeted a dreadnought, a massive ship with weapons capable of destroying continents. He pressed the firing button. A beam of energy, bright white and impossibly focused, shot from the ironclad and struck the dreadnought directly in its center. The dreadnought exploded. It did not break apart slowly or burn from the inside. It simply ceased to exist, replaced by an expanding cloud of fire and debris. Direct hit, Park said, his voice barely above a whisper. Target destroyed. Around him, similar reports were coming in from every human ship. Vessels were dying by the hundreds. Their shields meant nothing. Their armor meant nothing. Their weapons fired back desperately, but human ships dodged their attacks with impossible grace or simply absorbed them without damage. Fleet commander screamed orders that no one could follow. Retreat was impossible. The humans had surrounded them completely. Surrender was impossible. His communication systems were being jammed by technology he could not understand. How long has this been happening? He demanded. How long have the humans been hiding this? No one could answer him. No one understood how a species they had dismissed as primitive could be so far beyond them. The battle, if it could be called that, continued. By the 6th minute, half the fleet was gone. By the 10th minute, only a few hundred ships remained, clustered together in a desperate defensive formation. Admiral Price watched from Earth Defense Command, her face lit by dozens of screens showing the destruction. Next to her stood General Cole, who looked almost disappointed. "It's not even a fight," he said. "They can't touch us." "That was the point," Price replied. "We didn't build our fleet to fight fair. We built it to make sure no one would ever attack Earth again." In the 14th minute, the last vessel was destroyed. It was the Eternal Dominion, Fleet Commander's flagship. He stood on his burning bridge, surrounded by the bodies of his officers, watching human ships close in from every direction. He had time for one final thought before the end. He thought about the thousands of worlds his people had conquered, the millions of species they had enslaved or destroyed, all those victims, all those civilizations crushed beneath boots, and now, finally, someone had crushed them back. The Eternal Dominion exploded in a ball of white fire. Fleet commander and 12,000 warships ceased to exist. The battle had lasted 14 minutes. Not a single human ship had been lost. Not a single human life had been taken. On the bridge of the ironclad, captains surveyed the wreckage of the alien fleet. Debris floated everywhere, glowing with residual heat. Somewhere in that mess was everything that remained of an empire that had terrorized the galaxy for 10,000 years. "Captain," his first officer said, "we're receiving orders from Admiral Price." Nodded. "Let me guess, Phase 2. "Yes, sir. The fleet is to proceed to the immediately." Looked at the stars, toward a distant point of light where they had built their empire. They had come to Earth expecting easy prey. They had found something else entirely. On a transport ship, a young ensign named Tors approached her commanding officer. She was new to the fleet, one of the many soldiers who had only learned the truth about humanity's defenses today. "Sir," she asked, "why did we pretend to be weak? Why did we hide for so long?" Her commander, an older man who had kept this secret for decades, looked at her with tired eyes. "Because we needed to know who would attack us first. The galaxy is full of predators, ensign, species that see weakness and cannot resist the urge to attack. They showed us exactly what they were." He turned back to the viewport, where the human fleet was forming up for the journey to space. "Now we're going to show them what we are." The fleet vanished into quantum-fold space, leaving behind nothing but wreckage and silence. Earth had been attacked once. It would never be attacked again. 98 years before the attack, humanity discovered the truth about the universe. Dr. Cross was only 32 years old when he made the discovery that changed everything. He was working at a deep space monitoring station in Chile, listening to signals from distant stars. Most of what he heard was noise, the random sounds of the cosmos. But one night in 2089, he heard something different. It was a message, and it was not meant for Earth. Cross worked for 3 months to decode the transmission. What he found made him sick to his stomach. The message was a military communication between two alien civilizations. They were discussing the conquest of a planet called Seven. They described the destruction of its cities, the enslavement of its people, and the harvesting of its resources. They talked about it the way humans might discuss clearing a field of insects. Cross went to his superiors. They went to their superiors. Within a week, the leaders of every major nation on Earth were gathered in a secret meeting beneath the Swiss Alps. What they learned was terrifying. The galaxy was not empty. It was full of life, thousands of intelligent species spread across countless worlds. But it was also full of predators, empires that had spent millions of years conquering everything they encountered. Species that saw other forms of life as nothing more than resources to be used or threats to be eliminated. Earth had been lucky. Humanity's corner of the galaxy was quiet, far from the major powers and trade routes. No one had noticed the small blue planet orbiting a yellow star, but that luck would not last forever. Sooner or later, someone would find Earth, and when they did, they would come with weapons and demands. The leaders of Earth faced a choice. They could announce themselves to the galaxy, try to make friends and hope for the best, or they could hide. They chose to hide. Dr. Cross was put in charge of the project. He called it the Primitive Earth Protocol. The idea was simple but required incredible discipline. Humanity would continue to develop technology in secret, far beyond what they showed to the outside universe, but publicly they would appear weak. Their space program would seem slow and clumsy. Their weapons would look primitive. Any alien scanning Earth would see exactly what they expected to see, a young species taking its first steps into the stars. The real work happened in secret. Underground facilities were built on Earth and beneath the surface of the Moon. Shipyards were constructed inside hollowed-out asteroids. Scientists worked on technologies that the rest of the galaxy believed impossible. And slowly, over decades, humanity built a military force unlike anything the universe had ever seen. General Reeves was one of the original architects of the plan. She was a young officer in 2089, assigned to oversee the military aspects of the protocol. For 60 years, she helped design ships, weapons, and defensive systems that would remain hidden until the day they were needed. Now she was 94 years old, living in a small cabin in Montana. On the day of the attack, she sat in her living room and watched the battle on a secure screen. She watched the alien fleet approach Earth with arrogance in their formation. She watched the Moon open up and reveal its hidden weapons. She watched 40,000 human ships appear from quantum-fold space. And she smiled. "We did it," she said softly, speaking to a man who had died 20 years ago. "It actually worked." The deception had been perfect. For nearly a century, alien scouts had occasionally passed through Earth's solar system. Each time they scanned the planet and moved on. Their reports always said the same thing: primitive species, no threat, not worth conquering yet. They were simply the first to decide that yet had arrived. What made the plan work was patience. Generations of humans had lived and died keeping the secret. Children were raised knowing that they might never see the day when humanity revealed itself. Soldiers trained on weapons they might never fire. Scientists developed technology they could never publish. An entire civilization held its breath, waiting. Dr. Cole was a historian, one of the few people allowed to document the secret history of the protocol. On the day of the battle, he sat in an observation room at Earth Defense Command, recording everything he saw. "This is the most important day in human history," he said into his recorder. "Everything we have built, everything we have hidden, everything we have sacrificed, it all comes down to this moment. Today, humanity stops pretending." He watched the fleet die in 14 minutes. He watched the human ships, so advanced they seemed like magic, tear through alien vessels like they were made of paper. And he thought about all the people who had made this possible. The engineers who had worked in secret for decades. The soldiers who had trained without knowing if they would ever fight. The leaders who had kept the faith, generation after generation. "The galaxy thinks we are children," Cole said. "Today they learn that we are something else entirely." The philosophy behind the protocol was simple but brutal. The universe did not reward kindness. It did not care about fairness or justice. The strong survived and the weak were destroyed. Humanity had looked at this reality and made a choice. They chose to be strong. But strength alone was not enough. They had been strong. The countless empires that ruled the galaxy were strong. What made humanity different was patience. They had waited until they were not just strong, but overwhelming. They had built weapons that no other species could match. They had developed technology that the rest of the galaxy did not believe was possible. And they had let their enemies come to them. As the human fleet prepared to travel to a message was broadcast across every known frequency. It reached thousands of alien civilizations, from the great empires to the smallest colonies. The message was simple. Earth remembers those who came in peace. Earth does not forget those who came with weapons. On a dozen different worlds, alien leaders watched their screens and felt something they had not felt in a very long time: fear. Back in Montana, General Reeves turned off her screen and looked out the window at the mountains. She had given her life to a plan that many thought was insane. She had kept secrets that had nearly destroyed her. She had watched friends die without ever knowing the truth. But it had been worth it. "The galaxy will never forget this day," she said to herself. "They will tell stories about what happened here for 1,000,000 years, the day the humans stopped hiding, the day the universe learned to be afraid." She closed her eyes and thought about all the work that still remained. They were just the beginning. There were other empires out there, other predators watching and waiting. Humanity would have to deal with all of them eventually. But that was a problem for another day. For now, she allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. The plan had worked. Earth was safe, and the galaxy would never look at humanity the same way again. The human fleet emerged from quantum-fold space above Prime, and for the first time in 10,000 years, the people knew fear. There was beautiful in a strange way. Purple oceans covered most of the surface, broken by continents of gray rock and black forests. Cities rose from the landscape like silver needles, reaching toward the sky. For 100 centuries, no enemy had ever come this close. They had always been the ones doing the conquering. Now 40,000 human warships hung in their sky like a death sentence. Captain commanded the vanguard of the fleet. She was a small woman with dark hair and steady hands, and she had spent her entire career preparing for moments like this. She looked at the alien world on her and felt nothing but cold determination. "Open a channel to the Planetary Council," she ordered. "Let them know we're here to talk." The council met in a massive chamber at the heart of their capital city. 12 leaders, the most powerful individuals in an empire that had ruled 4,000 worlds. They sat in chairs made from the bones of conquered species, surrounded by treasures stolen from 100 civilizations. When the human transmission appeared on their screen, they saw Captain's face. Behind her, through the viewport of her ship, they could see the human fleet stretching across the stars. Leaders of the hegemony said, "6 hours ago, your fleet attacked without warning or provocation. That fleet no longer exists. 12,000 of your ships were destroyed in 14 minutes. Not one of our vessels was damaged." The council members looked at each other. Some of them had not believed the reports. They had assumed there must be some mistake, some exaggeration. Surely no species could destroy a fleet so quickly. Continued, "We are not here for revenge. We are not here to destroy your civilization. But your empire as it currently exists will end today. You have 1 hour to surrender unconditionally. If you refuse, we will dismantle your military capability by force. The choice is yours." The transmission ended. The council erupted into argument. High Counselor, the oldest and most respected member of the council, raised his hand for silence. "We cannot surrender," he said. "The hegemony has never surrendered. Our ancestors would curse our names for eternity." "Our ancestors never faced an enemy like this," another counselor replied. "Did you see that fleet? They have planet crackers, ships that can break our world in half. If we resist, they will destroy us. Then we will die with honor." "Honor?" the counselor laughed bitterly. "There is no honor in extinction. The humans are offering us survival. We should take it." In the end, the council voted to fight. Pride was stronger than wisdom. They activated their planetary defenses, thousands of weapon platforms, shield generators, and automated systems designed to protect them from any attack. For 10,000 years, these defenses had never been tested. The test lasted approximately 3 minutes. Commander Jason led the ground assault team. He watched from his transport ship as the human fleet disabled the defenses without firing a single conventional weapon. Instead, they used something else, a cascading electromagnetic pulse, technology so advanced that they had no defense against it. The pulse spread across the planet like a wave. Every piece of technology it touched simply stopped working. Weapons went silent. Ships fell from the sky. Power grids collapsed. In the space of a few minutes, a civilization that had conquered 4,000 worlds was reduced to pre-industrial conditions. "Ground teams," said into his communicator, "you are clear to deploy. Remember your orders. No unnecessary casualties. We're here to secure the archives, not to slaughter civilians." The human soldiers landed in the capital city to find chaos. Citizens wandered through dark streets, their technology useless, their world suddenly silent. They looked at the human soldiers with terror in their 4 eyes. But the humans did not attack them. They did not burn their cities or enslave their people. Instead, they moved quickly and efficiently to secure key locations, government buildings, military headquarters, and most importantly, the Imperial Archives. Counselor, the youngest member of the Planetary Council, watched the humans from his window. He was a historian by training, responsible for maintaining the records of conquests. He had documented the fall of hundreds of civilizations. Now he was watching his own civilization fall. A human officer approached him. She was young, with red hair and a calm expression. "Counselor," she asked. He nodded, unable to speak. "I'm Lieutenant Sarah," she said. "We need access to your archives. Complete records of every world the hegemony has conquered, every species you have encountered, every military action you have taken." "Why?" managed to ask. "Why do you want our history?" The lieutenant looked at him with something that might have been pity. "Because we need to understand who you were, what you did, how many civilizations you destroyed." She paused. "And because the species you conquered deserve to know what happened to them." Led her to the archives. As he walked through the silent streets of his capital, he thought about the irony of his situation. For centuries, he had recorded the history of victories. Now he would watch as humans recorded the history of defeat. Across the galaxy, the news spread at faster-than-light speeds. The hegemony has fallen. A species called humans destroyed their entire fleet and conquered there in less than a day. On 4,000 worlds, enslaved populations heard the news and began to rise. Species that had been crushed by the force suddenly found their oppressors helpless. Revolutions broke out everywhere. The empire that had taken 10,000 years to build collapsed in days. Admiral Price received the reports at Earth Defense Command. World after world was declaring independence. Species that had lived in fear were suddenly free. The military, scattered across the galaxy, was surrendering en masse. "Admiral," her aide said, "we're receiving diplomatic requests from 17 other major powers. They want to establish relations with Earth immediately." Price smiled thinly. "I'm sure they do. Tell them we're reviewing their histories first. We want to know exactly what kind of neighbors we're dealing with." She looked at the galaxy map on her screen. So many civilizations out there. Some of them were probably peaceful. Others were certainly predators, just like the humanity would have to deal with all of them eventually. But that could wait. For now, the message had been sent. Earth was not a victim. Earth was not prey. Any empire that threatened humanity would share this fate. On Prime, Counselor finished opening the archives for the humans. As he watched them copy centuries of records, he asked Lieutenant one final question. "What will happen to my people?" Looked at him. "You'll survive. Your civilization will continue, but you'll never threaten anyone again. Consider yourselves lucky." "Lucky?" asked bitterly. "Yes," said. "The destroyed hundreds of species completely. We're letting you live. That's more mercy than you ever showed anyone else." Had no answer to that. He watched the humans work in silence, knowing that his empire was over. The hegemony, which had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years, now existed only in records. And the species that had ended them had done it in less than a day. 1 year had passed since the day humanity revealed itself to the galaxy. The universe had changed in ways that no one could have predicted. The hegemony, which had ruled 4,000 worlds for 10,000 years, no longer existed. Their species survived, but they would never again pose a threat to anyone. Their military was gone. Their technology was limited. They had become exactly what they had once made others, a conquered people living under the watch of a greater power. But humanity had not become the new oppressors. That was what surprised everyone. Ambassador Christopher Lane stood before the newly formed Galactic Assembly, looking out at representatives from 300 different species. Some of them had been enemies of some had been slaves. Some had simply watched from a distance, waiting to see what would happen next. All of them were afraid of humanity, and Lane knew it. "Thank you for accepting our invitation," he began, his voice calm and measured. "I know that many of you are wondering what we want, what our plans are, whether we will become the new masters of the galaxy." He paused, letting the silence stretch. On every face he could see the same fear. They were waiting for the other shoe to drop, waiting for humanity to reveal its true nature. "Let me be clear," Lane said. "We have no interest in conquest. We have no interest in empire. We did not spend a century hiding so that we could rule over others. We hid because we wanted to survive." He pressed a button, and a display appeared behind him. It showed Earth small, blue, alone in the darkness of space. "This is our home, the only home we have ever known. When we discovered what the galaxy was truly like, we faced a choice. We could have tried to make friends. We could have announced ourselves and hoped for the best. But we knew what happened to species that did that. We had seen the records. The peaceful ones were always destroyed first." Lane's voice hardened. "So we chose to be strong. We built weapons that no one could match. We developed technology that no one believed was possible. And we waited for someone to attack us first because we knew that someone would." He turned back to face the assembly. "They made that choice. They came to our world with 12,000 warships and demanded our surrender. They planned to enslave our people and take everything we had. Instead, they found something they did not expect." Another image appeared, the wreckage of the fleet, floating in space near Earth. 14 minutes, Lane said. "That is how long their fleet lasted. We destroyed 12,000 warships without losing a single vessel of our own. And then we went to there and ended their empire in a single day." The assembly was silent. Every representative was thinking the same thing. If the humans could do that they could do it to anyone. Lane nodded as if reading their thoughts. "Yes, we could conquer the galaxy if we wanted to. We have the power, we have the technology, no one could stop us." He paused. "But that is not who we are." He stepped forward, his expression serious. "Understand this clearly. We have no desire to rule over others. We will not interfere in your affairs. We will not demand tribute or obedience. You are free to live as you choose, to build your civilizations as you see fit." His voice dropped lower. "But there is one rule that you must follow, one line that you must never cross. Any species that raises a weapon against Earth will cease to exist. This is not a threat. This is not a negotiation. This is simply a description of what will happen." He let the words hang in the air. "We did not want this power. We did not ask to be the strongest species in the galaxy. But we will use that strength to protect ourselves and our people. If you come to us in peace, you will find friends. If you come to us with weapons, you will find the same thing they found." The assembly adjourned in silence. No one knew what to say. In the months that followed, the galaxy slowly adjusted to its new reality. Some species reached out to humanity, hoping to establish trade or cultural exchange. Others kept their distance, too afraid to make contact. The empires that had once competed for power now watched their borders carefully, knowing that any act of aggression might bring human attention. On Earth, life returned to something like normal. The great secret had been revealed. The hidden fleets had been shown to the universe. Now humanity had to figure out what came next. Lieutenant Commander Daniel Hayes, who had been stationed on the moon when the first arrived, was promoted to captain. He was given command of a new vessel, the Horizon, an exploration ship designed not for war but for peaceful discovery. On the day of his departure, he stood on the bridge and looked at his crew. They were young, most of them. They had grown up knowing about the secret, but they had never expected to be part of what came after. "Our mission is simple," Hayes said. "We are going to explore. We are going to find new worlds, meet new species, and learn everything we can about the galaxy we live in. We are not going out there as conquerors. We are going out there as neighbors." His first officer, Lieutenant Blake, stood beside him. She was young and eager, with bright eyes and a quick mind. "Captain," she said, "do you think we'll find anyone friendly out there?" Hayes looked at the stars on the so many lights, so many possibilities, so many unknowns. "I hope so," he said. "I really do, but if we don't, we're ready." The horizon jumped into quantum-fold space and vanished, beginning humanity's first true exploration of the cosmos. On Earth's moon, a memorial had been built. It was a simple structure, a wall of black stone covered with names. But these were not the names of humans who had died. These were the names of every species that had ever attacked Earth. They were listed there now. Beneath their name, like all the others, was the same inscription: "They came to conquer. They found something else." Admiral Price visited the memorial on the anniversary of the battle. She was older now, preparing to retire. Her life's work was complete. Earth was safe. Humanity's place in the galaxy was secure. She traced her fingers over the name and thought about all the civilizations they had destroyed, all the species that had been wiped from existence by their greed and cruelty. In a way, humanity had avenged them all. "I hope you're the last name we ever have to add to this wall," she said quietly. But she knew that was probably not true. The galaxy was vast and full of dangers. Somewhere out there, other predators were watching. Other empires were calculating. Other species were wondering if they could succeed where they had failed. Price smiled grimly. Let them wonder, let them calculate, let them watch. Because somewhere in the archives of a dozen dead empires, the same warning had been recorded and ignored. A warning that should have saved if only they had listened. A warning that future civilizations would either heed or regret. Do not go to the third planet of the yellow star. The beings there are not what they appear to be. The universe had learned that lesson now. Earth would make sure they never forgot it.